So, you've just been thrown into the deep end of other transactions, or OTs, and you have no idea what's going on? Don't worry, I'm here to explain OTs in 5 minutes, or until I run out of coffee, whichever comes first. Let's start with the basics. What exactly is an OT? It doesn't stand for Old Testament. It's an other transaction. And if you're wondering what that means, the best way to figure it out is to break down the two words. First, let's talk transaction. In this context, a transaction is essentially a contract. Yes, an OT is a contractual agreement, but not in the way contracts are defined under the Federal Acquisition Regulation, or FAR. It's not a blanket purchase agreement, or BPA, or a basic ordering agreement, or BOA. Instead, it's its own category of agreement, legally binding but free from the FAR's traditional constraints. In OT parlance, a FAR-based contract is referred to as a procurement contract. That brings us to the other part. An OT is simply another type of transaction that differs from FAR-based procurement contracts, grants, or cooperative agreements. If you think OTs are some brand new cutting-edge innovation, think again. The government has been using OTs since 1958, when NASA needed a way to collaborate with brilliant engineers and scientists without burying them under 800 pages of FAR clauses. Since then, OTs have been used to acquire cutting-edge technology, high-tech software, and AI from companies that would rather set their offices on fire than deal with a traditional government contract. One of the biggest reasons OTs exist is to engage non-traditional companies, also known as NTCs. Now, these are companies that may not have an army of compliance lawyers, but they may know how to build a drone that can outmaneuver a fighter jet. And if you're wondering whether your company qualifies as an NTC, the answer is simple. In the DoD, you're considered non-traditional if you have not performed in the last year under a contract subject to cost accounting standards. In other words, if your company has only been doing commercial fixed-price contracts, or hasn't done any federal contracting at all in the past year, you're an NTC. Much broader than you thought. So, what can OTs actually do? OTs allow the government to engage companies on their own terms in ways that would otherwise be troublesome or downright impossible using the FAR. They help broaden the industrial base, support dual-use projects, like technology with both government and commercial applications, in other words, and speed up acquisitions by avoiding the bureaucratic nightmares of traditional procurement. With OTs, agencies can use creative contracting solutions, like using simple Word documents instead of 300-page RFP forms, filled with incomprehensible FAR clauses that no one reads anyway. Now, let's talk about the different types of OTs. Research OTs, authorized for basic, applied, and advanced research projects with mutual sharing. Prototype OTs, 10 U.S.C. 4022 to acquire prototype capabilities which can later transition to production OTs under paragraph F. And procurement for experimental purposes. The goal of OTs is to minimize burdensome requirements that might constrain innovation. Agencies are encouraged to avoid overly prescriptive solicitations, technical constraints, or unnecessary paperwork that could exclude commercial technologies. This allows for more flexibility in cost, schedule, and technical decisions throughout the project lifecycle, ensuring that both affordability and manufacturability in later production phases. Now, that being said, you do need to ensure you're using these authorities properly. Now, take prototype OTs under 10 U.S.C. 4022, for example. The project must include a prototype that is directly relevant to enhancing mission effectiveness of DoD personnel or improving platforms, systems, components, or materials. Now, if you fail to meet this requirement, you could be protested. However, once you confirm that you're using the statute the right way, OTs offer significant flexibility and are generally protected from protests. A common question is, can I just award an OT to anyone without competition? After all, the FAR doesn't apply. Well, then the Competition and Contracting Act doesn't apply, right? Technically, that's true, but the common sense principle of competition to the maximum extent practicable still applies. Now, the key phrase here is practicable, which means feasible. If conducting a competition makes sense, do it. But if there's only one company in the world that can do what you need, then sole sourcing is perfectly acceptable. OTs are all about common sense, finding the best way to reach the right companies quickly and efficiently. What about price analysis? Since OTs often involve prototypes or emerging technologies, price competition may not always be feasible, and that's okay. There are other ways to determine a fair price. Even when multiple companies compete, their proposals may not be one-to-one comparisons, meaning assumptions must be made. But here's a reality check. All financial models are based on assumptions. OT agreements allow for flexibility in pricing methodologies, so long as the price is reasonable and justifiable. Also, forget about format, just make it work. One of the biggest advantages of OTs is that format really doesn't matter. You want to draft an agreement in Google Docs? Cool. Typed in a napkin? Less ideal, but still legally valid. Chiseled into stone? A little dramatic, but sure. The point is, the agreement should make sense for both parties. It doesn't have to follow an 80-page boilerplate template that no one understands. The same logic applies to solicitations. Keep them simple, describe the problem, provide basic instructions, and let industry propose solutions. So do you still need documentation? Yes, but keep it simple and concise. This isn't the FAR. Nobody's grading you on how much useless paperwork you can generate. You still need to document your decisions, but the focus should be on clarity and necessity, not excessive red tape. Now, at its core, OTs are about flexibility, speed, and avoiding the bureaucratic mess of the FAR. If used correctly, they allow the government to acquire cutting-edge technology without scaring off innovators with 500-page solicitations. But if used incorrectly, well, congratulations. You've just reinvented the FAR with extra steps. That's Other Transaction Authority in 5 minutes, as best as we can make it. Comment down below if you have any questions and join us next time. Wink.